I am a huge believer, Phil, that AI is going to be fantastic in the space that we work in.
What inspired the idea to use machine learning for transaction categorization?
We use Netflix's Glee model and wanted to lead, and that's the L in Glee, on automation within this space. AI seems so normal to talk about in 2024, but in 2019, there is hesitation because people don't like change.
If you could give one piece of advice, what would that be?
Put trust above everything else.
In this episode, I'm joined by Stu McEwan, Staff Product Manager at FreeAgent, to explore how they're leveraging AI to make accounting software smarter. Stu walks us through the journey of implementing AI, the lessons learned from working closely with customers, and why trust is at the foundation of any successful AI innovation. If you've ever wondered how AI can save time while keeping users in control, this episode is a must listen. Stu, welcome to the podcast. Great to talk to you, and great to talk to someone from the oft-voted friendliest accounting software, right? I mean, that's a cool thing to win, the friendliest accounting software.
Absolutely. So we love it. We absolutely never take it for granted. It's the one that we definitely love to receive, for sure.
So look, we're going to talk about AI, as is this podcast. And I want to start with talking a little about FreeAgent and FreeAgent's AI journey. So what inspired the idea to use machine learning for transaction categorization, and how did you identify it as a critical area of automation within the platform?
Yeah, so one of the core jobs to be done with FreeAgent is to file accurate taxes on time. I'm sure that's the same with all accounting software, but in order to do this, to get like the level below is assigning bank transactions mostly, as well as invoices and bills, to the right categories, to the right VAT codes, etc. And that's known as reconciliation. And so doing this importantly and accurately is crucial to everything that underpins FreeAgent. Banking is the place where all these ledgers are posted so that you get those accurate figures to HMRC. And chart of accounts, there are hundreds of categories, and they do vary between software, but there are so many choices, especially for small business owners. So way back in 2019, we set ourselves a vision of not just ensuring that accounts were accurate, but that the accounts were accurate from day one of using the product. And within this, we kind of use Netflix's Glee model and wanted to lead, and that's the L in Glee, on automation within this space. And really that means expanding and making accurate transaction categorization, and thereby providing that continuous source of accurate data. So traditionally, or typically, I guess, customers import transactions into FreeAgent via bank feeds. I mean, there's still people on statement uploads, but the vast majority on bank feeds. And at that case, or that stage, users need to categorize those transactions. And so we have we've had for quite a while, a rule-based system that looks at what a user does and then tries to replicate that in the future. But we've noticed that there's a really big gap for that day one experience, trying to get automation to pick up the onboarding journey. So when you first connect your bank feed, when you first bring your transactions into your accounting software, to categorize them so that you're starting with something. And something we heard a lot from our customers are, when you pull in the transactions and there's no automation on day one, you get hit by this red wall of unexplained entries. So we're trying to get them over that red wall. And so there was that opportunity to utilize AI or machine learning, to be specific, to address that gap, that day one gap, allowing those users to nail that important admin, stay on top of everything that they needed to do on day one less headache, I guess, when you're joining a new software. And then therefore we kind of set about a journey about designing and building an AI tool that would allow them to do that from the first day of using FreeAgent.
That's really interesting, and it's so good to kind of get that kind of understanding of the journey that you went through. And obviously, this is a kind of a multi kind of team effort, right? So this sits across product engineering, it sits across data science. So talk me a little bit through that kind of development process and how all the different teams kind of came together to bring this vision to life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a team effort. And I guess it all stems up from the fact that we have amazing data sets of hundreds and thousands of millions of user categorized transactions. So not just banking data, but data that's been filed on tax returns, things that users have said, this is right, or accountants have said, this is right. And so we have that kind of pool to build up on. So we kind of approached it as a supervised learning problem where we take information from historical categorized transactions to learn patterns and then use those patterns again across customers that we don't know about yet. So like early research focused on experimenting with lots of different models, and we got very technical, and there's a lot of data science led kind of approaches here. But really we used bank transaction attributes in all cases as the model inputs. And what we learned very, very quickly is that some categories or nominal codes respond better or had clearer patterns than others. So for us, we have travel, like bank fees, insurance, and accommodation and meals. And they were really easy to predict. So that was the kind of starting point, the jumping off point to say, well, even if the model could be quite simple, we know that these ones are going to be relatively accurate. So we essentially started there, and introduced that first level of AI. So that kind of looks like, if I break it down a little bit more for those that love the technical context, we have the client code within FreeAgent app. So that's extracting bank transactional data and sending them for categorization. So that's like step one. And then we introduced an AWS SageMaker, and that was an endpoint which hosted our model, and then more FreeAgent code on top to process the responses and determine the transactions that should be categorized, and then some code in the front end, so what the user sees, to display those categories, and then events in the back to say, what are users doing with these? Are they changing them? So that's like the 5-step approach. It's quite a technical approach, but hopefully that kind of gives some context to what we did there. And all of this runs in sync. So this is constantly running across our pool of historical transactions, which updates every day. And we kind of built that in 2019, beta tested it to a really small number of customers, and got their feedback on these 4 levels of categories, which was very small scale at the time. But in 2019, not many people were doing this, about using that AI level to build up a model to kind of do this. So it was very much, there's elements that I've talked through there that are very much product led. Like my responsibility is to the users and making sure they understand what it looks like. So that like front end code. There's a data science team who led on all the modeling there, and then there's various other teams around the business that get involved with that. But that's kind of how the model looks like, or how we built up over time for that first launch.
And actually, you kind of touched on something I want to dive in a bit deeper, was around that initial level of customer feedback. Because we know that when we build a product and we release it out to the big wide world, with all the best intentions, sometimes we go out there and we deliver it, and the feedback isn't what we expect, or it's, the usage isn't what we expect. So from your perspective, what were some of the kind of key learnings or surprises, sorry, from that customer feedback? And how did you then go on to kind of iterate based on those insights?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's one that we constantly deal with today, as we did back in 2019. I think the initial discussions when we go out and we spoke to practices and we spoke to their clients, there's always an element of hesitation. I mean, AI seems so normal to talk about in 2024, but in 2019, where you're essentially saying to bookkeepers, especially, and business owners that do their own bookkeeping, we're going to now do this thing for you, there is hesitation because people don't like change. And so we started very, very small, like I say, on those 4 nominal codes, and with a very, very conservative level of accuracy. So the initial feedback was really positive, because it was the ones that felt like low-hanging fruit, where people knew what they were going to be. They were the same things that they did all the time, and we managed to sweep them up really nicely. So that was really positive. One thing we do in the app is, whenever we have an explained the transactions, we highlight it in an orange color with a different icon, so that it's very clear what we've done versus what an accountant or bookkeeper's done, when it's kind of green and approved and things like that. So we made that very obvious. So what we tended to do over the couple of years post-launch was continuously experiment and update the model with more and more categories, as well as slightly and very slightly lowering the threshold of our conservative strictness, as it were, around the accuracy, to see how our users would adapt. And generally, because we did it so slow and over 2 to 3 years, it was really positive. But one thing that worked really well for us was we tested on a lot of dummy data outside of the production environment. So we weren't going to people and saying, by the way, we've changed your categorization level from 2% to 12%, and we've got a whole heap wrong, and you're going to have to deal with it. So we did a lot of testing alongside that. We also changed models. We moved to a transformer model, and that allowed vast improvements to our accuracy and to the front end UI. And we kind of realized that our ceiling went from about 20% of low hanging fruit to about 80% where we could get to, and say, do you know what? We can get to 80% of transactions. But the most important element in all of this, or the center of all this, is the customer. And we spent so long working with the customers, with a small group of beta testers that kept rotating so that we're getting different feedback all the time, and with the likes of our support team and our sales team, to make sure that it landed right and that it was doing the right thing. And I think when you asked about the biggest learning there, Phil, I think the biggest learning for me was around what they wanted, or what customers want AI to feel like in their app. And there's basically like three main learnings there. They told us, we want AI, when you're categorizing my bank transactions, to be a guiding hand. We don't want it to be a cheerleader, just positively reinforcing what you're doing. That didn't really resonate with them. They don't want to say, look what I've done for you, look what I've done for you. It didn't sound great to the customer. They definitely wanted demonstration of how to do things rather than absolutely doing everything for them and just saying, now it's done, you don't need to worry about it. We're not even going to show you what we did. And the third point there of learnings was, they didn't want us to get in the way of them learning what we're doing as well. But they wanted us to recognize where they are in the progress. So what that essentially meant for us is, every time we import transactions and categorize, users were telling us, don't tell us every time that you've done it. Don't keep interrupting my flow when I'm in FreeAgent trying to do other things to say, I've now done this thing, check it out. I've now done this thing, check it out. They just wanted us to get in the way, not get in the way of learning, but kind of tell them subtly through ways over time that we're doing things for them. So yeah, a lot of learnings then. It has revolutionized from our existing vision of the machine taking over and doing all this, to something that's much more probably akin to what you said at the start of the pod, customer friendly, and working alongside them as a helping hand.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you don't. I always think that you get the award for friendliest technology, not just because of your staff and the people that work there, but because of how the software works as well, right? And I think, well, I always have these conversations that whilst we track and we call it product NPS, it's not product NPS. It's NPS for the whole business in terms of, and anyone that doesn't know what NPS is, Net Promoter Score, generally used by businesses. So when you're sitting there doing your, would you recommend this company 1 to 10? That's an NPS score, and we take that, and there's some metrics on how it works. But like, I always think that NPS score is more about the company as a whole. And as good as the software is, if you've had a bad interaction with that company that morning, you're probably going to rate it less. So yeah, really interesting. Now, I always think, as a salesperson myself, throughout my career, product build these amazing things. Like, they then put it out to the wild, and then we come along and we mess it up, right? We kind of tell people that it can make your lunch and it'll cook your breakfast for you and stuff like that. Joking aside, how do you make sure that that message from what you build and what it can do then gets through to kind of the other teams like sales and marketing, and you all continue that alignment of that thread, so that when it's delivered to the customer, it's being presented and kind of pitched in the right way?
It's a really good question, Phil. I think there's a couple of elements to this. I'll touch upon the product element first before talking about these other teams. One thing that our founder, Rowan Labouré, has always said is, if your user experience has to explain to your users what you need to do, it's bad user experience. And so this is very much how we built this automation, that we don't want any of our customers going, what's going on? I need to understand what to do or what it's done, and things like that. Is very much built with an ability to understand from day one. So there is that element which helps our internal teams, because the user experience is so slick and so easy, and it's something we hear about all the time at FreeAgent, that you don't have to hard sell a lot of things where you don't really understand what you're talking about. So I think that underpins your kind of question of kind of how the sales and customer support teams work. However, in saying that, I'll always hugely praise sales and support in product-led organizations. I think it's very easy to say that product and product engineering do all the hard work and the glory, but in FreeAgent, at least, the sales and support teams are absolutely paramount to that. So there's a couple of things we do that are really crucial. So within support, all of our product and engineering teams have a representative. We call them a SPOC, a support point of contact, and they are in the projects from day one. So it's not that support are this auxiliary branch that sits somewhere else that get calls from our customers. We bring them into every discussion from day one. Hey, I've got an idea. Here's a proposal. What do you think? To now we need to go to full scale testing. Let's bring the rest of the support reps in. So they recruit people to speak to. They do that talk from a user research perspective, but they also help us so much. And with the greatest will in the world, I am here as a product person to be the representative of our customers within engineering circles, but support are the ones that really know this inside out. And with FreeAgent, the sales team are really similar as well. We have representatives, and there's be a lot of names like Tony Stevenson and Jem Malik that you'll be aware of that really get the product and work so closely with the likes of myself to understand that. And there is one major document that we've been using that it's worth calling out. It's a value proposition document for everything that we do from our products. And what this does is it gives every team the level of fidelity for everything that we're releasing in a single document. So there's a section that's like, here's an elevator pitch for this function. Then there's really detailed support driven. I need to understand everything about what's going on. So you're a support member, here's where you go. If you're a comms member and you want to build marketing, you look in your comms section of this single document and it tells you more than an elevator pitch, but maybe the value propositions, you can build a marketing campaign off the top of it. It's got competitor analysis in there. It's got pretty much everything. And we all gather around as a company this single document, which isn't just led by product, it's led by everybody. And that's it. That's the real value, because everyone champions it then. And you gather around that single point. And so they're involved from day one. And I think that is the secret, Phil. If you involve people from day one and champion their expertise, they then become champions of what you're doing. And then it's never feels like selling after that.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, right? Like, I think quite often where that disconnect happens is where people come in too late into the process and they're not part of the journey. And I always use the analogy of building Homer Simpson's car. I don't know if you ever remember that episode, The Simpsons, where Homer gets to design his own car. And it's a disaster, right? As it would be, because it's Homer Simpson. It's got like 15 wheels and 2 horns. It's crazy. And I always think if you involve people too much in the design of something, that you end up with that, because no one will ever. But you've also got to be careful that people have that input, understanding, or on the journey. So fast forwarding to today, then, what does the tool look like now? How has it evolved, and kind of what impact do you think it's had on your customers and I guess FreeAgent as a whole, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say categorizing bank transactions that come in through a bank feed is probably the number one time saver, or number one removal of daily admin for your bookkeepers, your accountants, and your small business owners. So at present, our statistics are 65% of all transactions added on day one of a user with FreeAgent, user's journey with FreeAgent, gets categorized to about 93% accuracy. Now, we have grand plans to expand this, but I think what's really, really important to call out in the market is it's extremely easy for FreeAgent to turn 65% of transactions to 100%. Like, we could do that very quickly, but we don't want to, because the drop in accuracy, the loss of trust, is so important to our users and what FreeAgent wants to be, that we keep it at a level where our accuracy is 93% plus. So I definitely seen a few things out in the market where they say 100% of transactions are categorized, 100% of anything is categorized. And that's always a little bit of a red flag for me, because it doesn't come with and this is our accuracy off the back of it. So we're very, very proud with that, of that. And we've introduced some extra elements on the top of this model. So what we do now is, if we explain a transaction for you, or even if we don't actually, if we've got a high confidence that it may be another category, so it may be like a second option, we surface that to you as well. And we'll say, look, we think it's this, but there's also a decent chance that it's this over here. Like, we think it's computer software, but it might be computer hardware. And we'll tell you that straight off the bat when you're coming to approve your transactions or explain your transactions, so that you don't have to manually figure out or go through the chart of accounts to find the right one. So that's a really nice thing that we've introduced. But I think what has as an impact on our customers is really, especially as we go into MTD IT, and this is, I know we're talking a year and plus away, but really it's going to come around very fast. And I think it serves as the bedrock for what FreeAgent can offer to the SMEs that are going to be captured under MTD IT. And that is that with our bank feed adoption rate being at 73% of all of our active accounts, which is, I think, more than, like, way higher than you'll see in the market for sure, that when you have the bank feed adoption at that higher rate and transactions are coming in with a 93% accuracy on day one, then it's really saying that if the move to cloud is far easier than if you're importing transactions and having to do things manually. And then with FreeAgent, you have that kind of mobile app. We have a very strong mobile app, single mobile app that does basically everything you do on desktop. So you can categorize on the go for everything that we haven't caught. And that loop, I think, makes FreeAgent a terrific proposition for MTD IT, although I am very biased in that. But it underpins everything that we do, and the time saved is pretty astronomical.
Amazing. That's really interesting. It was such a fascinating way to kind of take a deep dive into a specific area of what you guys are doing. So I've got two lightning questions for you. The first one is AI tools. What's your go-to AI tool? And you can't say ChatGPT, clearly. But do you have a tool that you like or you favor, and you think that that's like a really good tool for you?
Great question. Do you know, I try and use everything a little bit. I don't rely on AI yet. He says asterisk the time at 2024. I don't think there's anything I would call out as head and shoulders above anything else yet. I am a huge believer, Phil, that AI is going to be fantastic in the space that we work in, this accounting software, fintech. But there's nothing that I use daily or regularly that I would say is a better tool than others. But there's some tremendous initiatives going across the market in the practice tech stack for sure.
Love that. And I guess last question for me, if you could give one piece of advice to a business looking to build an AI product, what would that be?
The advice would be put trust above everything else. I'd hope that we're responsible enough as a human race and software developers that we will, but I think the success of FreeAgents is working with customers and putting their trust first. And at any time that we thought that we would cross the line and our numbers would be higher in terms of categorization, but we might lose customers or lose their trust, we didn't do it. And I think that's been our success. And I would wholeheartedly encourage others to take that approach to it.
Stu, that was great. Cheers.
You've been listening to the Silver Linings podcast, which was written and produced by me, Phil Hopton, and Lara Bolsonaro. The podcast is edited by Lee Stallard and Nomad Video. If you'd like to find out more about Silverfin, you can visit us at silverfin.co.uk or check us out on LinkedIn.